And we're back, Stripe Show podcast on a Thursday. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. The Worldwide Technology Championship at Mayakoba. God, it was a hell of a lot easier just saying OHL. But it's a different sponsor this week, and they're back at Mayakoba. And this guy that is sitting next to me here on the screen, for those watching on video, if you're not and you're listening via audio, he's a teacher that, he's got 4 players in the field this week, and he joins me from Las Vegas. Jeff Smith, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, great to see you, Travis.
So I got to tee this up. A year ago, OHL in Mayakoba, one of your students, Viktor Hovland, comes into the last hole and drains a long putt to defeat another one of your students, Aaron Wise. How do you handle that? Hovland wins, Wise gets second, dramatic fashion. You're the coach of both of them. You got to be like, Jiminy Christmas, this is amazing.
It was wild. Obviously, I've never experienced that before, and I very rarely watch golf on TV, but I was not going to miss that one because I knew they were both near the top of the leaderboard. So I was watching it, and my phone was blowing up at the same time. Everybody was texting me like, oh, wow, you got a guaranteed win, because I think Aaron was, in the clubhouse with the lead, and Viktor was tied on the last hole, and he had I think he had about an 8 to 10 footer for birdie. So I don't know. It was weird. It was great to see them both play well. I was excited for both of them, and I knew Viktor was going to have to make a putt to win it there, and he did it. So, congrats to him. And I think it's Aaron's still a little bit salty today over that putt. So he kind of reminds me of that all the time.
Yeah, Hovland finished 20 under. Wise finished 19. So you went 1-2, and you also had 17th as well, by the way, Patrick Rodgers. Yeah, so you had 3 in the top 10 or top 20. Those 3 are in the field. Now you add a 4th, the Alabama Crimson Tide, Davis Riley, who's in Bermuda. So your guys are, they like this Bermuda, Mexico, right? Fall series. All the guys here are playing well as they run into this. So I'm curious, before we break down each one of these players, because we're going to kind of go deep dive here on each one. What's your week been like? I know you've been taking a few days off. Are you still getting texts like, hey, man, look at this video. Look at this swing, this course, this wedge. Like, how much activity has taken place over the last few days?
Not as much this week. This course is a place where most of these guys are all familiar with. They love to play there. I don't know. It's almost like a vacation spot when you get to go play a tournament there. So, Viktor actually so my new teaching base is in Memphis, Tennessee, at a place called Spring Creek Ranch. Okay. And Viktor came to see me for 2 days before heading over to Mexico. So I better not be getting very many text messages from him. He was pretty dialed in and ready to go. And so Aaron had a couple of weeks off before heading over to Mexico. So we were doing a lot of work, back and forth via, text messages and stuff like that before heading over. And then obviously Patrick is in great form, coming off top 10 at Safeway, and then top the 4th last week in Bermuda. So the guys' games are all pretty much dialed in. So, I might just get to sit back and watch this week.
You might just take the afternoon off, pour yourself a glass of wine, and off you go, right? Well, let's talk about Viktor first. I mean, Viktor is just a breath of fresh air. I actually met Viktor right after he won the U.S. Amateur in 2018. And I played in the Pro-Am, the API, and he hadn't turned pro yet. And I got matched up with Viktor and got to play 18 holes with him, get to know him. And I mean, he's just as nice a guy in person as you would think he is, right? The guy's always got a smile on his face, and he's just a breath of fresh air. And it's just so cool to see the success that he's having, and the best is ahead, as you can see, for this guy. And it's got to be fun coaching a player like this who is such an elite ball striker. Can you give the listeners an idea just how elite a Viktor Hovland is with the driver in his hand, the irons? Because we watch him on TV, and it's like fairway green, 8 feet, over again. Him and Morikawa, for crying out loud, shot 59 best ball at the Ryder Cup. I mean, insane ball striking. Give us an idea just how elite it is.
I for the time I've worked with him, I knew he was special. And, obviously I've been on the course with him, dozens and dozens of times, and got to see it up close a lot in practice rounds. But the Ryder Cup was pretty eye-opening to me. The format was really cool. The days leading up to, the tournament, when the tournament was going to begin, getting to play with guys like Rory and, all these different pairings in the practice rounds. And you really stood there and just kind of stacked up and watched the quality of his shots versus the absolute, best players in the world, John Rahms and the Rorys and the Sergios. And you just saw like there was no difference. Like the quality of his strike, the strength of his ball flight, how straight he hits it, how aggressive he can play, especially off the tee because of that. It's just an absolute weapon. There's a lot of times where guys are thinking about dropping back to 3-wood because the hole narrows or hitting an iron, and he's just, he's on go with the driver because he hits it so straight. So, I'm trying to remember exactly where we were, but it's kind of a funny story. I like to pair my guys up in practice rounds to save me from walking, 36 holes a day in practice rounds. So I try to get them all to play together.
It's a veteran move.
Yeah. So I think we might have been I think it was in Vegas not too long ago. And he was playing with Aaron and one other player. I'm trying to remember who it was, and it slips my mind, but Victor's just piping it on every hole, and these guys are all hitting the ball great. But I remember this other player going, man, I really need to go to the races. Yeah, don't worry about it. I feel that same way every time I play with Victor. So,
And Aaron's a good ball striker, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just a funny story. His ball striking prowess is well known out there, and we've been able to add some distance to the tee, off the tee, and it's made a huge impact in terms of his strokes gained off the tee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he looks bigger too, right? He's definitely he's more cut. He's stronger, isn't he?
Yeah, he hired a trainer this past season. That was another thing I sort of nudged him or advised him to do. A guy named Andrew Cummings, who works with a lot of great players out on tour.
Yeah.
And they've really, gotten after it, both weeks on the road and then having a program for at home. And, I think Victor, is finally seeing the benefit of those strength gains, and, also just how comfortable he is in his swing. You can go at it harder when you know where the ball is going. Yeah,
you said the word aggressive, like how aggressive and weapon, right? That kind of sticks out. And it reminds me of a story of his. I was talking with his college coach, Alan Bratton, who's been on the podcast. I spent some time with him at the college showcase event that I did for Golf Channel. And we were walking, and I asked him about Victor and driving the ball, and he caddied for him when he won the U.S. Amateur. And he said, Travis, he goes, there were times during that week where there were tough conditions. Guys were hitting 3-woods, irons off a tee consistently, and Victor's just grabbing the driver out and just piping it right down the middle of the fairway. Like, he goes, it was the most impressive stretch of driving I have ever seen in my entire life. I mean, kids are hitting little, just stinger trap 3-irons out there. And Victor's like, give me that driver. And just whoo, right down the middle. He goes, it was amazing. And I mean, it's a weapon, right? I mean, that's kind of, it's the modern game right now. I mean, you got to have distance, but and we know the longer you hit it, the more likely you are to miss a fairway and what that means going offline. Like, we get that. But these guys aren't that inaccurate. I mean, Victor is not exactly spraying it all over the place. Bryson DeChambeau is not spraying it all over the place. I mean, these guys are pretty damn accurate too, right? I mean, you add 10, 15 yards onto Viktor Hovland's ball. I mean, it's all right. He misses one more fairway, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, statistically, he's driving it about the same as he did before the speed gains. And so,
there you go.
A year ago, he was playing at about 170 to 71 ball speed in competition. And he's routinely at 178 to 180 ball speed now. So he's picked up a significant amount of distance, and he really doesn't miss many more fairways than he did before.
Let's talk about a short game, because you guys have done some work on that. Pete Cowan doesn't work with Viktor Hovland on a short game. Jeff Smith does, as we were talking off air. Sometimes you hear some weird names working with people, but Jeff works on everything with Vic. And you guys have made some substantial changes really over the last year in the way Viktor goes about his technique, in particular the club face, lead wrist condition. Viktor's you look at him, he's a flex lead wrist player, shaft lean, he's thumping it, he's compressing it. That can have its downside in short game. Walk the viewers through what you changed in the way Viktor is going about, just in general. I know there's all kinds of different shots, but just in general, kind of the stock pitch shot around the green.
Yeah, so like if you're familiar with Viktor's swing, most of the time, most players in their short game are going to mimic what they do in their full swing. And even in their putting, it kind of mimics their full swing. And so, Viktor's known for a lot of lead wrist flexion or bowing, arching of his wrist, if you will, in the course of his backswing. And that is a weapon as it relates to hitting the ball far and straight and fast and moving the ball fast, but it makes it a hindrance a little bit when you're trying to slow the ball down, which is what we're doing around the green. So, a lot of people have commented on TV about how he gets the club face shut in the backswing. And that's not really the thing that causes the problem in the short game. It's when you flex your lead wrist so much in the backswing, not only does the face shut, if you will, but it moves the club head way low into the inside of the hands. So it's sort of underplaying, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is once you make that move and the club head is low and inside of the hands, it changes where the bottom of the arc is. That low point moves back, and it makes the club approach very sort of shallow and from the inside. The problem with that is to not hit behind the golf ball. The golfer then starts to sort of thrust the handle more forward through the strike to move the low point forward, and that's where all the loft and bounce comes off the club. Viktor was fine hitting a lot of low bump and run shots with his old technique, but the problem was he couldn't elevate the ball very much and he couldn't spin it at all. He only had like fastballs coming out in his short game, and he was really poor from the rough. You can't be coming in super shallow and from the inside with not much loft on the club to play at all from the rough or from any kind of a short-sided scenario. So all I've tried to do over the last year is essentially minimize a little bit of the change in wrist flexion and to try to keep it a little bit more neutral. I don't have him trying to twist the face open or anything like that. It's just simply trying to slow down the rate of wrist flexion through the course of his backswing. And to put it in layman's terms, it keeps the club a little bit more on plane in the backswing. It keeps it a little bit more on plane on the downswing, and it allows him to get his wrist into extension quicker into the follow through, which allows him to present loft to the ball and sort of the bounce to the ground and add some speed at the bottom where he can create a little bit more friction and a little bit more spin. So I guess we've made it to where he can hit the higher, softer shots, more on command. And he's changed. I mean, his talent is unbelievable because I've never seen anyone change their short game as fast as he did and also do it as well. Like, he's got some serious shots that he can hit now that a lot of my tour players can't even hit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he can hit some serious high floaty spinning shots. Around the greens, he can play pretty well from the rough now. And now it's just a matter of building confidence with that technique and being able to take on the most challenging shots in the biggest moments. And I don't think he has that yet. If you watch a guy like JT, he's gonna if he has to hit a flop shot on the 72nd hole to win the tournament, he's gonna do it. Whereas Viktor is still probably gonna try to play it lower, play the safer shot. He doesn't really trust all those exotic shots yet, but that's coming.
So would you say, from a technique standpoint, as his coach, like the techniques are in? He knows them. He's quantified them. He knows what they mean in the way of trajectory and spin. Now it's just continuing to build that confidence and implement them in the right situations, no matter what day it is. Early Thursday, late Sunday, this is the shot at hand, have the confidence and hit it. And that's the final piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, 100%. Like you throw him on a golf course this fall that's been overseeded, he's going to rip spinners all over the place without even thinking about it. But then you take him somewhere where it's super grainy, like TPC Summerlin. Now you got to think about some of these shots and how to play them. And I think just continuing to develop that confidence in on those different surfaces and in those bigger moments, because let's be honest, he's a guy that's going to be in contention a lot.
Yeah.
And he's going to be a guy that's going to be in those moments a lot. So he's going to, in the back of his mind, he's going to be thinking, I don't really want to throw away a shot here, take myself out of the tournament. And it's just me, I challenged him a couple of months ago. I was like, dude, change the narrative around your short game. People remember you telling them that your short game sucked. Like, go out and prove that it doesn't suck anymore. Use it as a weapon.
Well, this past Pelham ball can sit up a little bit, right? Now we know why he won there. Now, so I'm sure he feels comfortable with that, because that past Pelham down there in Mexico, it'll sit up nice. Where, like you said, Summerlin here, right out my window here in Florida, man, the ball don't sit up quite as nice. You got that grain going, and he can sit down quickly. Yeah, I know about that. How often you're out there on tour a lot? How much is that being worked on with players? Just the difference between that full swing flex lead wrist. I mean, DJ, like there's others that have this. Koepka. How much of it just in general out there, like, man, I got to change a little bit of that lead wrist face dynamic on this shot relative to my full swing? Is that a common thing?
Yeah. So much so that, we break it down, the technique in practice. We get in a block practice setting and we isolate those movement patterns and we try to ingrain that. But then we go out and play practice rounds, and we have a focus during the practice rounds of getting balls up and down. We'll simulate different pin locations and do games and competitions during the practice rounds that, are really putting stress on his short game, where he still gets an opportunity to think about his technique, but he also has to execute a shot. So getting more of those reps will eventually sort of bleed into competition where he's not thinking about it anymore. I think he's still maybe in the phase where he has to think about it a little bit under the gun.
Yeah.
So, again, he's not there yet.
Yeah. Let's talk about your other guy here. Well, one of your other guys, Aaron Wise, finished second here last year. We talked about to Viktor Hovland, went to Oregon. Vic's got 2 wins. Aaron's got the 1 when he was the rookie of year back in 18, right? 2018?
Correct.
Yeah. And he's a guy, I've been kind of touting Aaron here this fall, like on the podcast, and I've been pushing him out there and playing him, and he's been doing very well for me. You look at him in the fall series here. He was 26th at Sanderson, 8th at the Shriners, 5th at the CJ Cup. Aaron's a good ball striker, good driver of the ball, good iron player, good short game around the green. His putter, historically, and particularly last year, kind of held him back a little bit. But I got to tell you, I watch him in the last 5 events here coming into the fall series. 2 events coming into the fall series and now another 3. And I see a big improvement with his putting. Like, he's starting to make putts. And if Aaron Wise makes putts, he's going to win. Right. Yeah. And I put him on the short list here again this week, as I did at the CJ Cup. What's happening here, Jeff? Because Aaron Wise looks like a different guy to me on the greens.
Yeah. He's always been, even going back to high school or college days, a very streaky kind of putter. Seemed like when he had it going, he'd make a lot of birdies and he would win. He's won a lot at every single level. And, as it relates to his PGA Tour career, man, he has worked really hard on his golf swing and his ball striking, and he's improved steadily from his Rookie of the Year campaign to this season, to where he's the best he's ever been tee to green. And last year, the putter really, really held him back. He went through some kind of dark times there, just searching, trying different things, trying to find an answer. And, he hired a guy named Stephen Sweeney, who's based in Jupiter, who works with a lot of guys out on tour. And, Stephen did some really, really nice work with Aaron, just helping him sort of understand, his current technique, how it works, if they was going to go in any different direction, what to be cautious of or pitfalls, not to fall into. And they made a lot of progress together. I started to see them. I started to see Aaron putt better towards the end of last season. And then he made a decision to go back to this long putter, this broomstick, if you will. And a lot of people were surprised by it. They'd never seen him use it before, but he did use this putter in college. A lot of people don't know that. As a matter of fact, he won in college at Oregon with this long putter. So I think him going to that long putter, it was such a drastic change from what he's been doing for the last 3 years that it just sort of reset the system a little bit, sort of reset him mentally. He started to build some confidence with it. And I think the last few months his putting has been unbelievable. So I think he's found something that kind of sets his mind at ease, because with Aaron, it was all mental. The technique was sound. Steven did an incredible job of getting his technique cleaned up. And it was just some mental scar tissue in there of putting poorly for basically almost last 2 seasons, if you will.
Wow.
And hopefully, I think he's put all that behind him, and you're seeing those results. He's playing the way that Aaron should play.
Yeah. Well, it was the only missing piece, really. I mean, like you said, he's done some good work on his swing, and you can see it. I mean, he's consistently in the positive off the tee. I would say, pretty darn consistent in the positive in approach, consistent in the positive around the greens. I mean, give or take one here or there, but he's strokes gained tee to green. Aaron Wise is right there, and now you start seeing the ball go in the hole, and you start building some confidence, and you have no more scar tissue. All of a sudden, you're like, I don't have any weaknesses, like you don't have any weaknesses out on the PGA Tour. Most players have a weakness, right? I mean, when you look at them from a strokes gained standpoint, now their weakness is relative to their competition, right? Not to you and I out there trying to chip the ball with them and putt, but they have some kind of weakness that perhaps holds them back, right? To perhaps winning or a top 20 or the difference in missing the cut or not, whatever. And with Aaron, I mean, you see the trend he's at, he makes this a positive. I don't see any reason why he just wouldn't clip off a few more. I mean, because when you when your confidence is up and you don't have any weakness, like sky's the limit at that point in the game of golf.
No question about it.
Let's talk about Patrick Rodgers. We'll stay in the Pac-12 here. He went to Stanford. He went to Stanford, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he went to Stanford. He wasn't a Duck. Rodgers looking for that first win, but knocking on the door here as of late. He was 6th at Fortinet, 4th at Bermuda. Pretty golf swing, right? You look at him, big guy, 6'2". Like you sit there and you can really watch this guy swing the club. I mean, it's just like this nice, long, fluid swing. When you work with Patrick on the swing, what are the 1 or 2 things you guys are working on and that you want to see him get better at?
Yeah. So since I would say the end of last season, the one thing that we've been keying on primarily is taking some of the curve off the golf ball. And, long story short, Patrick and I have worked together for over 3 years now. Okay. And we pretty much overhauled his golf swing during that time. And I feel like from a technique standpoint, his technique has been solidified for a couple of years now. But he had this, ball flight pattern with a lot of right to left movement on the golf ball, very in to out type of swing. At times it caused him to have too much volatility in his ball flight, really couldn't flight the ball very well. And I think it hurt his wedge play a lot. So, that from a technique standpoint, that primarily comes from a little bit too much spine tilt, a little bit of excessive right side bend in the downswing, which kind of gets him underneath and swinging way out to the right. So we worked hard on that a little bit in the off season, and then heading into Napa, it was probably the first week where he went out and said, I'm committed to hitting every shot straight or making it fall slightly to the right. And it was very noticeable with his ball flight. His trajectory came down, the curve came off the ball, and I started to see him hit some shots that week that I hadn't really seen in like 3 years from him. And I think he went all in on it, and he's comfortable. You know, when you play pretty much a significant curve for a large portion of your life or career, you get used to aiming in certain places and looking at certain parts of the fairway and greens. And there's sort of a recalibration that has to happen, you know, not only physically in your swing, but mentally, how you're picturing the golf course and how you're picturing the shot. And I think he's really kind of these last few weeks, you know, last month or so, kind of figured out what that looks like for him. And I think he's playing with a lot of confidence. I mean, the conditions in Bermuda were really tough, playing in a lot of wind. And I think his old game where he just kind of hit the ball straight up in the air with a lot of draw on it, I don't think he could have played that well in those kind of conditions, you know, with his old ball flight. So, you know, his season last year wasn't the one that we, you know, hoped it would be. There was a lot of factors going on, you know, at that time, you know, maybe even outside of the game of golf. You know, he became a father for the first time last January. So learning how to be a professional golfer with a newborn at home is, for a young player like him, is not easy. So
29?
29 years old, I believe. Yeah. So I think he's managed that really, really well. He's figured out, you know, how his schedule is going to look and how to, you know, have time with the family and then also have time to work on your craft. And I'm super excited about where he's at. He's playing the most stress-free golf that I've seen from him in the last 3.5 years. So I'm super excited about his potential this season.
This over curve of a draw, right? And for our audience, so, you know, Patrick's path working out to the right, he's got to start the ball right and then draw it back. If it doesn't draw, then it's on the right side of the cone, right? And and if it overdraws, now all of a sudden he's, you know, created this miss on the left-hand side. So the cone is pretty big, right? So when you take the curve out, now all of a sudden that start line's tighter and there's less curve. So the misses, would you say, have gotten tighter? Not only the trajectory's coming down because he's more on top of it, but he's not curving it as much. So the cone's tighter, start lines are tighter. Would that be an accurate statement for the audience?
Yeah. I mean, that's 100% accurate, but it goes even deeper than that. You know, as it relates to distance control, when you start curving the ball so much from right to left, the ball speeds up, the spin rates drop. So you get a lot more variability in how far your golf ball is going to go from, you know, condition to condition. And so distance control, especially with his mid to short irons, was a glaring issue. It was the thing that, in my opinion, separated him from the top 25 players in the world. I mean, Patrick is a Ferrari physically, like speed, athleticism, super dynamic, drives it incredible, hits it really far, can hit long irons great and high, but, you know, a 9-iron from 155 yards is where he was weak. You know, a wedge from, you know, 115 yards is where it needed to improve. And so I think not only did getting the curve off the ball bring his starting line and overall dispersion in, it made how far the golf ball was going to go a bit more predictable.
That's good stuff there. Is that, I mean, that's just kind of in general, isn't it, Jeff? We're seeing less curve, guys, just pretty straight in general. I mean, it's, you know, it kind of starts here and like, you know, this way or, you know, whatever, right? Dies right, dies left. We're seeing that cone really narrow and less of this.
100%. You're seeing a generation of golfers show up on the PGA Tour now that have had a TrackMan since they were a junior golfer.
Yeah.
And so they have had years and years and years of face-to-path awareness, and they instinctually know how to control the curve on the golf ball now.
So was he like a little stubborn about it? It's like, no, I'm going to keep curving it. And you're like, well, dude, what do I got to do?
I wouldn't say stubborn. You know, you're talking about someone who's had an incredible amount of success at golf. I mean, let's let's not forget how decorated he was coming out of Stanford. He did it all. He won every tournament there was to win, number one amateur in the world, just an incredible player. And so the biggest piece of growth that I have seen from him in 3.5 years is not looking backwards. And I think that's really hard to do. When you had all this success, players always want to look back and go, well, this is what I did when I played my best golf. And I think that's a dangerous game to try to chase what you did 7 or 8 years ago and trying to recreate that instead of like looking forward and saying, what's the new best version of myself or my game? The technology's different, the ball's different, the clubs are different. How do I work with these tools and manage this in a way that I can be the best version of myself? And I think he's done that. And I think he's, well on his way to playing his best golf.
So what if these three are like in the last group together? What the hell are you going to do?
I'm going to be thinking, where the hell is Davis Riley? Why is he not
Listen, that's a good segue. Talk about this fourth player. Davis Riley from Alabama finished 7th on the Korn Ferry Tour last year. Got his card. First year. Let's see. He's played miscut the first 2 weeks, 56 at the Shriners, 7th at Bermuda. Educate my audience on who Davis Riley is. What kind of person we looking at with Riley, and what can we expect from the rookie here into 2022?
Yeah, first of all, personally, a super fun guy to be around. Funny, got a lot in common with him. I really enjoy working with him or being around him. He makes the work a lot easier.
How long has it been with Davis?
So I want to say, we started so I think it's been about a year. Last fall. Yeah. So about a year. Super talented. Obviously very decorated coming out of Alabama. He's very, very strong game coming out of college. Needed to be a little bit more refined, I would say. He's another player with that came to me with a pretty big right to left movement on the golf ball. And, similar to Patrick, leading to a lot of blocks and hooks, overdraws, especially with, potentially the longer clubs. And we've had to make some smaller swing changes to sort of alleviate that and get a little straighter ball flight, but he still moves it a tiny bit right to left. So very powerful player. All these guys are 180 ball speed, it seems like now with the driver. But, for him, it was more just refinement in his short game, refinement in his putting, understanding how he needs to practice, creating some structure around his wedge play, sort of a system for that. And then it's just getting experience. I mean, every rookie on tour faces the same challenges. Going out and trying to figure out how to play these golf courses because they're so much different from what you played in college and especially what you played on the Korn Ferry Tour. So my message to him is you don't need to change very much. Just because you're going up to the next level doesn't mean that you need to blow things up to, try to be Rory McIlroy. You need to keep doing the things that you've done your whole career that have made you successful. And you need to chip away at these few key things. You got to putt it better. You got to chip it better. And you obviously have to be more refined in your wedge play and your decision-making on the course. And so luckily for him, he's got a very experienced caddy on tour that knows all these courses. So that's going to, play into him being more comfortable out there. But I have huge expectations of him because I know what kind of talent he is.
Yeah, he won, let's see. Well, of course, that Korn Ferry Tour season was like twice as long.
Forever.
So you have to go back. He won San Antonio in 2020, and then he had another win too. He won before that. He won in Panama.
Yeah.
And, other top 5s, 10. I mean, so he, obviously finished 7th on the Korn Ferry Tour. So got his card, came out. How much? You make a good point there. A rookie comes out, PGA Tour, gets an experienced caddy who's seen these courses. That has to have a lot of value, right? I understand my guy, my player, how he plays. Okay, here's my thoughts on these holes and how we should play them going in. That's pretty priceless, isn't it, to have an experienced caddy first year?
There's no question. I mean, not only having a caddy that understands how those courses are designed to be played, but also knowing the strengths of the player and where you can push small little marginal edges that you might have. Davis is a great driver of the golf ball, much like Viktor, hits it long and straight. So, being a caddy that has that type of player is going to give you confidence to be very aggressive out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but not only that, but an experienced caddy is also not afraid to say things to a rookie player, like being able to calm them down in big situations when they can tell that they're rattled a little bit, or when the player just needs to vent and letting them go, that kind of thing. And so, handling the crowd. I mean, there's just so much that goes into a role of a good caddy, and Davis is lucky to have a good one.
So Davis is 6 foot, 175 pounds. Is he, he's hitting it out there. I'm looking right now. I mean, gosh, he's 305 this year off the tee, which, he's probably even a little longer than that. I would,
I mean, that's, those stats are just only a handful of events. I think those are through 2 or 3 events for him, but
yeah,
he's 120 mile an hour club head speed, 108 low 180s ball speed with a driver. He's probably in the top, 30 longest guys on the PGA Tour. So
wow,
he's got a lot of speed.
That's awesome. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Stripe Show Podcast, Davis Riley. We've had, let's see, of the 25, we've had 11 on the podcast to this point, introducing the top 25 to the world. And Davis Riley has not been on. So I'm going to reach out to him. Put a little bug in his ear, will you? And tell him that we need him to come on here. I would imagine he's going to play the next 2 weeks also, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's in Houston on his status, but if he is, he's definitely playing. I know he's playing Sea Island.
He'll play Sea Island, yeah. Jeff, you're the best, man. This has been fun breaking down these 4. You got some horses in the race here this week, and they're all playing good golf, right, coming in. So go pour yourself a glass of wine and just take the rest of the night off.
All right, buddy. I appreciate having me.
All right, Jeff Smith, we appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow with Samantha. All right.